Meeting to order, nor can we move into executive session. So what we're going to do is kind of morph this into just a little work briefing, if you will. Some of the items that we would hear in executive session, we will not hear today, but Mayor administration will be providing those of us present today with a presentation related to the dog park. So certainly everyone is welcome to stay, and thank you for being here on a Friday and taking some time out to be here. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Everson, Councilman Jenkins. Do know that you all intended this to be an executive session. As we expressed, we're good either way. And certainly appreciate and welcome the opportunity and the time. We're going to let Charles and Ronnie go ahead and get us hooked up here so that we can be able to do the PowerPoint presentation that comes along with this as well. And then we have another handout that we'll do at the end. And obviously, Mr. Chairman, members, as I've shared with you all, this is information that obviously first we wanted to share with you all first, but then have every expectation that we would in turn share it with the public in general afterwards as well. And so as soon as those guys, and just take your time, don't need to rush, we'll get into the PowerPoint aspect of this, and it'll give us a chance to be able to kind of go through this situation from an historical perspective and make sure that we, I think, all are on the same page. I've talked about this whole situation from several different perspectives over the course of the last year. Talked about priorities, we talked about process, we talked about price, but we never actually managed to be able to pull all of those things together, as well as with all of the background and context that we think is appropriate for this particular discussion. Are we ready for the with the PowerPoint? Just let me know.
And Mayor Glover, before we begin the PowerPoint, let me just make a statement, I guess, for the media that's here, is that had we gone into executive session, there are items that we would have been briefed on as a council that will not cover today, although there would have been no votes from that executive session. It was just purely informational. Anything that required votes would have had to have been taken up next week. All right, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We're not ready yet?
It's ready, but I don't know about the.
Okay, I guess they're back adjusting. And who's going to have the clicker? Oh.
Maybe what he went to get.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chair, council members, we'll just stand down for a second. I won't feel a need to try and fill up the space just to.
Sometimes we miss the old days of a flip chart and a magic marker.
Yeah, that's true. That's right up there with the abacus and the slide rule.
I'm only going back as far as slide
And there are some who are so young that they just went, what's abacus?
It was a rock band in the 80s.
Not a power out back here anymore, is there?
You got the ones in the pew.
Yeah.
So he would never Mayor.
All right, you ready? Will the clicker work for me?
Yes, sir.
That's a pointer or the clicker?
That's a laser pointer.
All right, which, then give me which is which.
The top button is the clicker.
All right.
The bottom is a laser pointer.
Okay. And it'll pick up a signal from where I'm sitting?
Yes.
All right, I think it may be good to dim the lights maybe? Yeah. If it comes up on the screen.
That's your receiver.
Okay.
This one not working. Got power.
This informal setting with these large breaks kind of gets some nervous looks on faces.
Mr. Chairman, members, I think we're going to replace the laptop, so that may take Charles a couple of more minutes. If you don't mind, would you, we'll just, I don't feel any pressure by the silence. I'm actually logging on and we'll check some emails here while we're waiting, if you guys don't mind. Certainly appreciate your time, and we will be as swift as possible once we do get started.
Okay, got something up.
Okay.
Right. I'm just warming up. Try to point it. Oh, yeah, you good.
Can we do both screens?
How is this changed?
Guys, can we do both screens?
Charles, lucky to get one.
Can you do both screens, Charles?
This ain't gonna bring it up for us. Yeah.
We're already in the other room.
I guess this is a good example of technology. Technology doesn't mean we just press buttons and something happens.
There are limitations.
Never become overly dependent on it.
Okay, you got one
Well, if we have to do just the one screen, we'll proceed with that if we have to. Guys, give us an indication if you'll get the second screen up. If not, we'll make do with the.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. All right.
We're in stereo.
Excellent. Please. I think a little more dimness will help. Mr. Chairman, Councilman Everson and Jenkins, again, appreciate your time for giving us this opportunity to present this information to you. As I've expressed to you all, Mr. Chairman, directly and some of you individually, what we're attempting to do here is to hopefully put in one place at one time what we think is all the relevant information that we think is appropriate for both the council and our constituents to give consideration to as we look to go forward with this situation. It's the compilation of all of these different factors that account for the position that I've taken to this point with regard to this matter. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, that if it's possible to be able to present it coherently and at one time, it maybe gives us an opportunity to look at this set of circumstances in a different fashion. You all received a letter and a staff memo from me on last week that gave some background on some aspects of this. What we are attempting to do here today is to ultimately boil this situation down to a set of circumstances where it gives us a chance to be able to do as best we can an apples to apples comparison of all of the various options before us with regard to this situation. And it's, from my perspective, what that comparison reveals that accounts for why it is that I believe that it is my duty and obligation as mayor, bless you, as mayor of this city to have the position that I've taken and to seek to try and find a way and a manner in which to be able to work with the council to come to some consensus so that we can ultimately move forward. It's very difficult to have a situation move forward in a positive direction when the information that you start off with ends up being bad or tainted or incorrect. If I were a lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, I would use the term, I cannot proceed with the fruit from the poisonous vine. But since I'm not a lawyer, I'll just make that reference as a parallel to what we're talking about. And that particular fact, I think, is clearly illustrated in the email that you see on the screen, or the email exchange that you see on the screen. As I mentioned, this was a part of the information that we provided to you all previously on last week for you all's consideration, and for our purposes today, I want to review it very quickly before we get to the next slide. This is an email that's dated April 12th of last year. The initial email is from Tim Wachtel, who is here with us today, and you all know is a SPAR staffer. He's one of our resident architects, and this came from Tim to Assistant Parish Commissioner, Parish Administrator rather, Randy Lucky, after some information had been requested of Shelley and the folks at SPAR that they didn't have any real context for or understanding for the basis of the request, but Tim felt the need to offer some clarification to make sure that it was clear as to what that information that had been passed along from SPAR staff to parish officials actually constituted. And that email reads, Randy, Shelley asked me to send you our drawing and cost estimate for the last dog park design work we did for Hamels Memorial Park. I want to warn you that the cost estimate is really a comparison / shopping list, and that it is not meant to be an estimate of the final cost of the park shown on the drawing. I never did get far enough along on the last design to do a final estimate because things kept changing. And then they really changed. The fencing distances on the cost estimate are pretty close to what is shown on the drawing. Randy Lucky responded on that same day, February 3rd at 5:04 p.m. Thanks so much, Lucky. Now, what was provided, as Tim detailed, was a shopping list or a comparison / shopping list for items necessary to facilitate at least a partial construction of a dog park that would have that particular configuration. If you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, will look at that particular illustration, you will notice that that is representative of the southern portion of the Hamels Memorial Park on Clyde Fant Parkway. It includes a dog park design that would have encompassed the existing pond that's there. On that site, you would have had a small dog area, you would have had a large dog area, and some shelter and fencing and what have you. New water line would have been extended and what have you. But that's what was used to come up with the, as Tim would put it, the comparison / shopping list. He and Shelley are very reluctant to refer to it as a cost estimate for the development of this, of even this facility, because based on their process, it is not fully inclusive of all the costs and the numbers that are necessary in order to come up with an actual projected cost of constructing even that particular dog park. But as you can see, that particular comparison shopping list is what came up to approximately $280,000 and was conveyed as information to the Red River Waterway Commission as the amount of money necessary in order to be able to effectively construct a dog park for the city of Shreveport at this location, or at a location in Hamels Park on Clyde Fant Parkway. Now, what you'll see in the next slide is an actual detailing of those items, that shopping list for various types of fencing, various heights and what have you, the water service, other improvements and what have you. And that's what comes up to the $280,000. Now notice, as I mentioned, that this is the location that's at the southern portion of Charles and Marie Hamels Park, around the existing pond, with a relatively flat topography. Certainly from staff standpoint, the less complicated of the sites involved in this situation. And it's also worth noting, Mr. Chairman, and Shelley and Tim can attest to this fact as well, staff has never been supportive of a Clyde Fant Parkway site. And certainly any Clyde Fant Parkway site that they ever gave consideration to recommending or trying to help make happen would have been one that would have been closer to downtown in the Stoner area as opposed to out at Charles and Marie Hamels. But again, because of the individuals involved advocating on the dog park side, it was constantly focused back towards the Charles and Marie Hamels Park area. Now the next slide that you will see is a map of the actual version of the dog park that was represented to the folks on the Red River Waterway Commission. What you see there is also what is included within the resolution and contract agreement between the city of Shreveport, the Red River Waterway Commission, and is representative of what the council approved and authorized. This is one that has a substantially different set of geographical issues and challenges than the more flat design that you saw. It also comes in with additional problems that staff has referenced to the folks involved with the dog park effort all along, not the least of which is the Fort Boggs area, which we have been informed constantly has significant historical significance. And there's also an easement that has been made available to Mr. Blunt of Blunt Brothers Construction. If you all can remember, during the construction for the energy company that's out on Preston, there was an ongoing months-long process by which you had a vessel out in the middle of the Red River that was essentially sucking sand and silt from the Red River. That effort had large tubes that ran from the river up the shore, across through what is Charles and Marie Hamels Park, under the parkway, and ultimately depositing that silt over into that particular construction site. Well, that was not just a one-time temporary set of circumstances. Based on a prior agreement that existed, I believe, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but before this council, before this administration, as part of the donation agreement, that easement would always be available. And so that's something that's a complicating factor with regard to developing this site as well. And then you also have the issue of the current walkways that meander through this area. As you can see, as these designs show, you have dog park areas that will ultimately end up being constructed and encompass what are our current walk paths, jogging paths within this particular configuration. Again,
where is that? I mean, from what I'm looking at, I see the walkways, but they don't seem to be obstructed. So,
well, I think you'll see that on one of the other versions of the map here. They do end up being impacted. And staff, Shelley,
Well,
I'll let you in.
I think what this map shows is, if you'll look at the map, the next map, you'll see, will show what the Dog Park Alliance had suggested to be their site.
You have a third one.
You got another map coming.
yeah.
And what's
This is the map that we approved in 2011,
No,
is it
sir.
not?
No.
Okay. What is the map that we approved that was
You wanna go to the next
attached
one?
with?
Before we switch to the next one, I mean, a clarification just for me on this. As I'm picturing the park, Area 1 and Area 2 are both at the north end and would be on that hill. Area 3 is what was basically encompassed in the map before this.
No, sir. All of that is north.
All this is north? Okay, all right.
And the reason, this map we did long after we did the cost analysis, because the Dog Park Alliance came and said, we don't want to be down by the pond. We want to be up on the hill. So Tim said, let's see how we can make it work on the hill. This is the only way it works on that hill, not to interfere with all those things the mayor has just outlined.
Well,
So
I think
this
the
is,
other reason, wasn't the other reason that we looked at recommendations from other communities saying that there was a certain amount of area that you needed in order to
no,
maintain
actually,
it?
we liked, I mean, if we were going to do one in Hamels, we were never really too excited about one in Hamels. I think we voiced that in several meetings that, that
We were
just,
less excited about Stoner.
we
It
were,
was a smaller area, and you said it would flood and it would be harder to maintain.
no, if you remember, the police department did not like Stoner.
Okay.
That, if you
Okay,
remember
that's
that.
accurate.
Right. Stoner, we have some amenities already there. It was less of a place where you're going to build something without everything else. It appealed more to us than this site did, but it still wasn't our favorite site. But what Tim did here, and he is certainly here and can speak for himself, but he took their idea of having a park at the north end of Hamels and tried to lay it out where it would work. And what we found was the usable space begins to shrink because, first of all, you're going straight up a hill down there because and I'm not going to run there, The other reason is you have to start splitting it up because we've got all these other things going on, dredge lines, walkways, those kinds of things. So all Tim did here was try to figure out if we were going to have to build one at the north end, how would it work? That's all this was. And so you can go to the next slide, I guess, and show them what was approved, the map that was used to approve their application, okay?
And as you see listed, thank you, Shelley, issues and challenges according to staff: geometry, topography, dredge line easement, disruption of existing uses, loss of usable space due to historic site and topography. So in addition to Fort Boggs, you also have the burial site of the elephant from Shreveport Zoo. And I think it's also important to note that there's never been a cost estimate that's been developed for this particular site, which, as the councilman just reiterated, is what the council approved, what was represented to the Waterway Commission, and is not the flat, simple fencing configuration as you see in the southern portion. And so one would assume that if that had just a price list of $280,000, then you have a considerably greater level of consideration for that particular set of circumstances. Now, what you see here is yet again what has been represented by the Dog Park Association as well as the Better Shreveport as the configuration of a dog park. This is what was put on the city's website per the ordinance for comment. It's what's still there now, and what in the minds of many constitutes the dog park that the city of Shreveport is supposed to be able to build with $280,000. As you can see in that particular configuration, the large dog area actually encompasses the Fort Boggs area, and again creates the potential for some considerable concern that could arise from the historical community. For those who are concerned about preserving the history of the city of Shreveport, Fort Boggs was a part of the installations that were along the Red River during the Civil War. So essentially,
have comments, however, saying that this could protect Fort Boggs because currently it's been driven over by dirt bike riders and it's degrading from that type of use. So there was, just for what it's worth, I remember when we did the public discussion and had comments, members of the historical groups in town did express that.
But they did feel that way if it was encompassed by the fence. Their concern with it being in the dog park is it getting torn up and dug up and stuff. So they didn't mind it if the fence went around it because it did make a barrier around it. But having it in the fenced-in area was a concern.
Okay.
Okay. So I mean, we tried to clear some of that up, like what their concerns were and what they weren't, and over the past few months, and having it in there I think is that concern, but having that fence around it they felt was a positive, could keep people from going on it.
So it's a mixed bag for them.
Yeah.
again, I think the most relevant point, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, is that what you have is two scenarios that call for the development of a dog park in the northern portion of Hamels Park, a situation that in terms of its geography, its challenges, its issue, is more challenging and more costly based upon what it will take to develop. You have a cost list that was advised to the folks who went and asked for the money in the first place. It does not represent the actual cost of developing this park. It's simply a shopping list for items to be included, but never was ever detailed in a way that gave us even the ability to approximate what the fencing cost and price list would be for this particular situation that's depicted here, and what's being represented to the public as what the dog park will be, or this one that's actually a part of what was passed by council and represented to the Red River Waterway Commission. Either way, both situations are, from our perspective, more costly, more challenging, more problematic. In addition,
which of these two was the one passed by council? I thought this one was the one passed by council.
You got two different paths. You got two different things going on. When you when the Dog Park Alliance brought their application to establish a dog park, the next map was what they included with their application, and y'all approved a dog park. The language itself doesn't say.
The
it just says
site specifications.
It says Hamels Park. The other map that the mayor has shown you is the one that you all was in the resolution that you passed with the contract with the Waterway Commission. This map.
Okay.
So you've got two different maps, two different
Got it.
two different council actions.
thank you, Shella. As I mentioned, I'm not going to even attempt to play a lawyer here on television, but there are contractual concerns that I'm going to ask City Attorney Terry Scott to come up and review with you all very briefly on that list of items as you see there.
What we did was to go through the contract, review the document. This is a document that was prepared initially by staff, attorney staff, I would assume, at the Red River Waterway Commission, initially provided to the city and Caddo Parish for draft. Caddo Parish was subsequently indicated that they would not be a party to the agreement, and so this is the agreement that went forward, that has gone forward between the city of Shreveport and the Waterway Commission. Some of the concerns that we've pointed out in regard to the contract is in regard to number one, we need to clarify which property, and that the cost estimate that was prepared and that's referenced in the agreement appears to have been provided for a property that is not shown on the exhibit. The exhibit references, the memorandum references Exhibit B, which is a cost estimate. Exhibit A depicts the property, the Hamels property, let's call it the northern end of the Hamels property. Based on the discussion that's been put forth this morning, there is some question as to whether or not that cost estimate actually reflects the cost or the shopping list, or however you want to refer to it, for development of the property that is shown in Exhibit A as the north end of Hamels property. That needs to be clarified. Item number two, if you read the agreement, there is some uncertainty as to whether or not the city is to be reimbursed for costs to construct the dog park, or if those funds are in fact to be advanced to the city by the Waterway Commission. There's language in the agreement, as I pointed out in 2 and subsequently in 4, that indicate in the agreement that the funds are to be advanced. And in 3E, and then further on in the agreement in Section 5, it talks about the city submitting invoices to the Waterway Commission for payment of the funds. Again, we believe that's critical, and that needs to be clarified, because depending on how the money is to be paid to the city by the Waterway Commission dictates and determines how the project needs to be set up by the city, and how and whether an appropriation would need to be made. The other item that we have mentioned is the agreement speaks to an increase of 10% in any component. The term component is not defined in the agreement, and so it's questionable, and we don't have the answer to whether or not component refers to those items that are included in the cost estimate, or if the term actually refers to something else. But an increase of 10% in the component is one of the conditions under which the contract can be determined to be modified, suspended, or the project abandoned. Again, our recommendation would be that that term component be defined in the agreement, because it appears critical for purposes of going forward with the agreement.
Chair. Any questions in that regard, council members?
Were these contractual concerns expressed prior to, and any comments on the legislation prior to the council voting on them, or any time before now in the past 2 years that we've been looking at this?
I did not know.
I think it's important to say that my position on this has always been that this is a bad thing to do, and that this is representative, Mr. Everson, of, as I mentioned earlier.
Your position hasn't always been that way. Your position has been...
My position has always been with regard to a situation that involves this process moving forward in this way and manner. Yes, I'll clarify other aspects of my position as we go forward. But again, this is, from my perspective, again, representative of fruit from the poisonous vine. The way in which this thing started, with another level of government making application to a body for funding for property that they have no control over, sure, and that they don't even govern, because it's not even within Caddo Parish. That process initially coming up with a contractual circumstance that involves us in a relationship with the parish along with the Waterway Commission. That process ends up being attempted to be corrected as best as possible by both Terry and Julie.
I understand and appreciate that, Mayor, and I think what I'm trying to establish is that, you know, there may be some good points here that are worthy of discussion. What I am still furious about, and I'm going to maintain a lot of it, it's been discussed, but, you know, the assertions that we can't have a we have third world streets and a first-class dog park. I mean, you're clearly fine with a first-class spray park that we've just last week accepted. You know, so you have made
No,
this.
it's not first class yet, because it's not nearly complete.
It's very popular.
No,
I mean,
it certainly is popular, but it's not world class by any stretch of the imagination.
well, but you're clearly okay with accepting those funds. You're clearly okay with approving a park that had 100 signatures requesting it, and over in Sam's district that cost taxpayer dollars, $200,000+. But you've fought every step of the way to get this one done, and so you've obfuscated some of these points by bringing up these issues that were insulting to these members of the community who had previously supported you on so many items and really felt like they had your support. And that's where a lot of my anger comes about. But I'll limit it there. But what I'm saying is, these, you know, had these been the basis of your initial argument and you'd been willing to work with, we could have avoided a lot of legal costs. We could have avoided a lot of you know, the public time that's been given on this issue. I mean, there are just a lot of things that, had we not initially looked at this as if it was such a contentious issue and just tried to come to some resolution in the beginning, there were many possibilities. But I'll leave my comments there for now. But
And Mr. Everson, I appreciate that, Jeff. But now also I would add, if the folks who were behind this effort and pursuing it this way and manner had actually listened to and been respectful of the position that I articulated very clearly from the very beginning, and that was that as mayor of the city of Shreveport, I cannot support any effort that seeks to go and secure funding from the Red River Waterway Commission or any other source of public taxpayer dollars for development of a dog park.
did you explicitly say that?
Yes, I did.
The Red River Waterway Commission.
I said
You
it very
explicitly told them
explicitly
Red River Waterway Commission.
when it was first broached by Woody Wilson, by Randy Lucky, that they wanted to meet to talk about them going and applying for funding for this. I said, no, I cannot support that.
Okay.
I told Kenneth Guidry and other members of the Red River Waterway Commission, I cannot support that. If you'll remember, the information that you see here from April of 2012 is what was requested by Randy for a presentation that they made to the Red River Waterway Commission in April of last year. A meeting I believe that both you and Oliver Jenkins attended.
Two separate meetings.
To express your support for it.
Two
The
separate.
decision and vote of the Red River Waterway Commission was made in June of last year. In April, in May, and in June, prior to the actual vote of the Red River Waterway Commission. I made my position, my sentiment, my concerns known to all individuals who were involved in this situation.
For that period of time, yes, I concur. I mean, I think what I was thinking you said is that you had always said that. But what you had always said is that you didn't want to see taxpayer dollars going towards it, but at least as I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong there, but I didn't, you know, but I don't think that in the time prior to that conversation, so in 2012, April of 2012, or around when that happened, you know, I'm sure you've been consistent on that point since then. I'm not saying you haven't,
Well,
but I am saying that prior to that, there was not, you know, because this issue, I mean, in the master plan of the parks that was in 2006, this 2006 citizen-driven study that you continually refer to, that has the creation of dog parks listed as a priority on recommended improvements project list. You know, since 2006 at least, this issue has been a request that's out there. And so from 2006, so for 6 years, with very little assistance, you know, they weren't told that they couldn't go to the Red River Waterway Commission. After 6 years, I might start looking hard at any source of funding I can as well. So, you know, but I understand that you have been consistent since then.
Well, but now let me also, and since you don't leave the other more emotion-driven issues aside, because yes, as I will admit and attest to, the idea that we would see a group like the Waterway Commission that was relatively silent after the tragic drowning of the 6 children at this location 3 years ago. Nothing. All of a sudden decide to step up and say that, yes, we should write $300,000 check for a dog park. I thought that was wrong. I was greatly offended by that. But now, even more so, and what's more important and more relevant in this situation, is that this whole effort never was supported or embraced in terms of a parkway location by the professionals on the administration staff, who, along with yours truly, have always been supporters and advocates of dog parks. But, and that's where the conversation from our perspective should go next, but who have always believed that a dog park scenario in Shreveport should go forward in the same way and manner in which they have effectively been stood up in other cities and other communities across this state. And that has been what I have been a supporter and an advocate for going back to my first term as mayor of the city of Shreveport. It's what the staff has always believed has been the best scenario for us to pursue, because it ends up being able to give us the greatest chance of being able to be successful, and also an opportunity for not just one dog park, but like Baton Rouge and some other cities, to have more than one, and to end up having them be, as the dog park advocates consistently advocate for, a place for people and not just for dogs.
Well, they're all parks for people. No dogs are going to drive there by themselves and get their registration tags. I promise you that much. So the assertion that these are parks for dogs is absolutely absurd anyway.
If
what you say is true, then Resolution 192 of 2011 is what you should have vetoed. That's the one establishing Hamels as the dog park. They don't have another location that they can choose, because this is the one that was chosen and established as the dog park. So what else can they request for?
And if you have a group that says that they're going to go out and take it upon themselves to raise private funds, private donations, is what was represented at that particular time, then that's something, while I do not believe it to be the wisest course of action, if that is what you want to undertake and accept as your challenge and believe you can make happen, then I'm willing to say, rather than vetoing that, then go and have at it, with the hope and expectation that either you'll find someone who's willing to write that check from a private foundation, or make that contribution, or write into their will that they'll donate a portion of their estate for this effort. If that comes together from that type of perspective, I'm fine with that. If you put yourself in a position where you're competing for resources, as we are, as staff would have you, and as that 2009 process indicated, that we should finish the parks that we have right now, especially those on the riverfront area, before we go and build separate ones in areas right now that, if it's built according to what's right now up front of us, would be a park just for dogs. And if you'll allow me to proceed,
how would it be a park just for dogs?
We'll get to that point if you'll give me just a few more minutes.
Well, I just want to know right now, quick answer.
All right.
How would it just be for dogs?
If you'll allow me to continue with the presentation, Jeff.
I'll be glad to, but that is an absurd assertion.
If you'll allow me to continue with the presentation.
Prove your point.
Thank you. Now, not here just to point out problems, but to also offer, Mr. Chairman, council members, what I think are some alternatives that we should consider. In looking at this situation, I saw that particular set of circumstances coming down to three different scenarios that could potentially be pursued. The first would entail allowing the entity that made the request for the funding to be the one that takes the lead in moving this effort forward at the Hamels location. The parish of Caddo made the request of the Waterway Commission. They currently have, as a part of their governmental duties and responsibilities, the animal control functions for Caddo Parish. So the idea of operating a dog park would seem to be an appropriate fit. You still have the opportunity to start with the same $280,000 in funding. The problem that you have goes to the point that Jeff and I were just discussing, and that is you have no existing amenities. The same scenario would be true right now for a park that would be pursued by the city of Shreveport at that location as well. There are no other amenities. What's considered an amenity that makes it a park for people, Jeff? A bathroom makes it a park for people. The ordinance...
running trails and parking lots? Do dogs use parking lots and running trails as is? They're there now.
The ordinance as it's currently written right now does not allow any children under the age of 12 to be able to enter into the dog park. So a dog park right now that we have to acknowledge would cost considerably more than the $280,000. Funding that would have to come from the city of Shreveport in order to be able to make that up, or the parish of Caddo, if they chose to accept this challenge, would end up not having any existing amenities, would not enhance any of the other developments downtown, and would still represent a challenge for us. It would not enrich any of our other existing recreation programs, either under a Caddo-led effort or a City of Shreveport-led effort at that location. There would be no opportunities to do any sort of branding. My good friend, Pat Simon, one of our Colonel Pat Simon, with the KSLA affiliate, did an excellent job of documenting what staff and I and some others in this community have always said all along represents a potential and best scenario for us to pursue with regard to developing a dog park in Shreveport. One of the things that's essential to that is having the opportunity to be able to make branding a part of the effort. Right now there is an ordinance that prevents any sort of advertising and signage along Clyde Fant Parkway, so we do not have that particular revenue generating opportunity. The last thing that you see there on that particular slide is adverse impact on a historical site. At Hamels Park, whether you encompass Fort Boggs, whether you go around it, or what have you, you still have that particular problem and challenge. Prince's Park represents one of the locations within the existing park infrastructure that would be a great place to start for the city's first dog park. The cost of development, construction for the dog park itself portion of one at Prince's Park would be under $100,000.
And how's that funded?
I'm sorry?
How is that funded?
Jeff, if you'll allow me to go on, we'll be able to get to that. I can tell you this, even that $96,000 represents less than what it would take in additional city funding if it came strictly from either some source of capital dollars or the general fund. It represents less than what the potential shortfall would be of what we could build for $280,000.
Unless we allowed them to use black chain link fence and not wrought iron.
But even you, Jeff, have said that because of the increased standards and expectation of what is the Clyde Fant Parkway, that wrought iron fencing is necessary and appropriate.
And
so that was never driven, unlike what has been
park,
represented by other folks involved in this process. That has never been something that I have established as an absolute requirement. I am honoring the folks who had the vision of developing the parkway in the first place. And believe that it ought to be someplace that is unique and special for Shreveport, and that's why it has always come and been the consensus of both yourself as well as Councilman Oliver Jenkins that wrought iron fencing ought to be what the construction materials are.
Although cost is the factor that is limiting us, that is a compromise I'm willing to make.
Again, when it comes to existing amenities, there are substantial existing amenities at Prince's Park. That is a staffed facility that houses right now 5 SPAR staffers. It is the headquarters of our therapeutic recreation program. It would have the opportunity to be able to interact with and be a part of what's offered there. There is existing parking. There is an existing playground, so it becomes that complete experience right from the beginning, where you can actually take a family and have people enjoy the dog park in the same way and fashion that the dogs are. Because the children who are under 12 can play on the playground. Those who don't want to be in the dog park can go into the playground, the gym, other areas. For folks who have to make use of the restroom facilities, those are there, readily available. And within just the last 2 years, Shelley, we have renovated that facility as well. So now it is now greatly improved.
It is a nice facility.
And it is adjacent to the Shreveport Common area that is being developed and would also end up being a catalyst to downtown. And as I mentioned, with the therapeutic recreation program being there, it gives a chance for us to be able to develop, as has even been referenced by some members of the dog community, an opportunity for us to have some pet therapy programs that would be helpful and beneficial to the young folks who come and participate in that therapeutic recreation program. And because it is not on Clyde Fant Parkway, and because it is also at one of the most highly visible locations in the city of Shreveport, certainly within our park system, it offers the opportunity for significant advertising opportunities based upon the model that has been already established in Baton Rouge, in New Orleans, and now Monroe, in terms of having dog park being branded by a corporate entity, and them having the motivation of not only doing it as a goodwill gesture in support of the community, but also obviously as a way of being able to promote and advance their brand. And there are no impacts of any way on any historical site or location at Princess Park. Negative impact on green agenda as identified by the Caddo Master Plan. At both Hamill Park scenarios, whether one that would be led by the parish of Caddo or one that would be facilitated by the city of Shreveport, yes. At Princess Park, no. Activities for children under 12 at Hamill's Park, no. At Princess Park, yes. Property ownership for Caddo, if they were to lead this effort, no. Don't own it, not even in Caddo Parish. Obviously, yes for us, and yes again for Princess Park. High visibility for security as well as for advertising opportunities. This would be our first venture into a dog park. And so having it to be both visible and staffed is something that we think is important. And obviously, as I've referenced, the ability to be able to secure the funding needed to cover the cost of developing this park through advertising and branding would certainly be possible at Princess Park. For parking, limited at the Hamill's location, more than ample currently at Princess Park. Lighting at the Hamill's location, none currently. Once again, one of the additional costs that would be a part of helping to make this a complete experience, a safe experience, not encompassed or accounted for right now within the $280,000. At Princess Park, there is already some existing. Obviously, we would look to enhance that in terms of what we're talking about. Access strictly from the parkway for the Hamill's Park scenario. For Princess Park, I-20, I-49, highly visible, downtown, Highland, other portions of the city, very easily accessible. All three sites are currently underutilized. Now, here's a dollar-to-dollar cost comparison for all of these. Hamill's location, whether Caddo initiated or city initiated, comes to almost $1 million. Restrooms projected to be $200,000. Additional lighting, $125,000. Parking, $120,000. Playground, $200,000. Currently, there's no place, and one of the things that's called for in terms of best practices for dog parks is having some on-site management, whether that's by paid staff, which we would think appropriate from a liability standpoint, or even if you made it available for volunteers, you still need a place for those folks to be based out of. There needs to be a place where people can go and know where they get their license to be able to have their application approved, because as the ordinance calls for, and unlike I think the impression that many people have of a dog park, you can only bring your dog if you have been able to effectively document that they have gotten their appropriate shots and vaccinations and what have you. And so there needs to be a place for that to be facilitated at a Hamill's location. And obviously there also has to be staff. There's a need for additional irrigation work if you want to avoid one of the challenges that we see with so many other dog parks, and that is because of the dog park activity, the grass gets worn down and you end up basically with dirt and dust and other hygienic problems that come about as a result of that. There's also a need, if you're going to have a bathroom, to have a sewer line that's currently not accounted for. The $280,000 has a projection for cost of a water line. But if you're going to have a bathroom, you've got to have a way of ridding yourself of the bad stuff. There would be a need for additional sidewalks and paving in order to make the area more accessible, also ADA accessible. If there's a desire to have shade structures at Hamill's, that's projected to be at about $40,000. And then additional maintenance equipment. And I know one of the things that's been argued by some advocates for Hamill's location is that we mow it now And so there'll be no difference in having to continue to mow and maintain it with a dog park. That's not true. With the fencing and other things, you're talking about not just mowing, and you don't mow it with tractors at that point. You'd have to come in more with riding mowers. You'd also have to weed eat the fence line and other things. And so it's the difference between essentially a yard and a pasture. When you go from a pasture to a yard, then the way in which you maintain it and upkeep it and the equipment that you use also becomes different. Estimated cost for a dog park at Princess Park, assuming that we'd be in a position to be able to effectively attract the attention of an entity that would want to partner with and brand with the city of Shreveport, would be zero. That number could potentially become a plus depending upon what that ultimate relationship ends up looking like. And I would offer that because this would be something that would be even different than other dog park scenarios that have been pursued in the other cities that we're talking about. And that is, none of them have the kind of high visibility that Princess Park has. If you drive by that location from Common, from Fairfield, or from the interstate, you will know that there are literally tens of thousands of vehicles who pass that location every day. The value and benefit that would have for an appropriately and tastefully branded and signed location would be substantial. And so we believe that based upon prior dollar amounts that we've seen identified based on media reports, as well as I mentioned, the additional added value and potential of this location, that particular cost could end up being zero, if not, go ahead.
Those are for the additional amenities.
Those are additional, yeah.
This is not,
But wasn't the irrigation included in the cost of the original?
the original, I'll go down there. All right, this one.
I thought irrigation was included.
What was included was a lump sum of $10,000, which was basically to do like a shrubbery, things like that. But if we're gonna irrigate and keep a turf, we're gonna have to spend more
So
than.
so it was just but it still ran water over there.
Well,
10,000 or no?
no, the 10,000 is just enough irrigation to do shrubs, things like that. This number includes what it costs to do the turf.
I guess what I'm
The
asking
water
is,
line was also included in that.
water line is
Yes.
included. That's what I mean.
Because the water lines
There's
haven't
no
come
water
the other
there
side
now,
of the park.
so.
Yeah, the
in
water
order
has to
develop
come-
this land in any way, we need water. And that dog park would get water there. Is that correct? Or the Red River Waterway Commission's proposal?
Well, and I do want to make this clear. There's a cost to build a dog park. We don't know what it costs to build a dog park at Hamels.
Yeah.
Honestly, and the mayor's only asked me,
Yeah,
As many ways
we all
could-
realize the design hasn't been done.
and we don't know that 280,000 will do it. What we do know is that in addition to whatever it costs to build and I'm going to use this term, fenced-in area for the dog park, we know there are additional costs that are needed, and that's these costs. So this is on top of what it would cost
These
to
are if
build.
you're gonna build it out to a park that,
Well,
this certainly isn't what they're requesting. I mean.
but it's certainly what I think we have as staff said all along that concerns us, is that we're going to go stick this, and I think, Jeff, you know how I felt about Hamels from day one. I have been concerned about it for a lot of reasons. One is the aesthetics of the parkway are very important to us. Keeping the look, it frightens me to death, the conversation y'all were having about fencing, because the parkway is such, we are so fortunate to have that in our city, and our citizens are fortunate to have a place of that kind of scenic green span. We don't get that anywhere else. And so we've always been concerned about that. The other concern we have is just like what happened at AC Steer. We go and we build this wonderful playground and we have no bathrooms. And for 5 or 6 years, people are angry, upset, and fighting for bathrooms. So when it comes time to do a bond issue, if you go and look at our bond issue, the majority of the projects that are in there are to complete places that we did exactly what we're going to do here. So I think we have to say these things. We have to say, that's our job. Doesn't mean you have to do it. But our job is to say, please don't do that to us again.
Yeah,
Please don't go
and I understand-
put something down there that doesn't have bathrooms, that doesn't have ADA accessibility, that doesn't have something for young people to do when they can't go in a park. Let's start with places that does have that, enhance those, then can we move on to creating new things?
I understand
So
what
that's-
we,
I mean, that's,
obviously, that we have an excess of parks. I don't think the typical citizen views it that way. I don't think most people will say, this city has too damn many parks.
Certainly the folks that Councilman Sam Jenkins just got money to build a park in their area don't believe that we have an excess
Yeah, they
of
don't feel
parks.
that way, despite being several blocks from one of the city's largest and most well-equipped parks by any measure.
I don't want to have to step in and defend Murphy Street Park.
I'm not insulting them, but I am saying they're near a great park.
No, I'm sitting here silently, but this meeting is not for me to defend Murphy Street Park. All of it is tax money. Money from the Red River Waterway Commission is tax money. It's just going to a different body. That's old bond money that's being used, unused bond money that's being used for Murphy Street Park, the same money that's being used in your district to deal with the streetscape around LSU, which I think was $500,000. So I don't want to sit in there to defend that, so.
Well, I supported that. I still support it.
Right.
I'm just saying.
And I supported the
and you-
500,000
and you-
also.
you-
But having said that, just to keep the record straight, Murphy Street Park has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about here today, in my opinion.
Well, it's just that a group of citizens requested a park, and they were granted a park. It was a group of 100 signatures, and they were granted a park in a spot that was previously not a park.
Well, let me say this now. I support the idea of a dog park. I think what's being presented to us today are some options on how to get there. I would really like to know what the Dog Park Alliance thinks about these various options. I don't know if any of this been shared with them or not. The Princess Park.
Yeah, we shared it.
option,
We shared it in the committee meetings several years ago. They don't want it. I mean, they'd love for there to be a dog park there. I think. But this particular group has applied for and spent several years and thousands of dollars to secure the site that they've applied for. So that's what they want. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not another group out there, or that there's not a demand for a dog park. I mean, Princess Park could make a great site for a dog park.
Well, but then my next scenario would be, when this process began, the parish was involved. I believe the first draft of a cooperative endeavor agreement that we saw had the parish in it. The next thing I know, what was coming before us did not have the parish in it at all. So I'm still trying to figure out what happened to the parish being a partner with us in this endeavor. And I'm not sure if anybody here has an answer to that, but
I think they envisioned their partnership as they were the ones that requested the $280,000 to be given to us.
and nothing more.
I don't know that they ever had more. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, but I'll be happy to see if I can find a better answer.
I think all these conversations are certainly relevant. And I think, this is informal setting, and when we get to a more formal setting where we actually are looking at legislation we may vote on, I think we'll have many of these same conversations again, and should, and have more people involved in them. Whether we're talking about adding new parks or doing anything, when it comes down to it, however we choose to move forward with a dog park, we're adding a new park to our inventory of parks, or a new component of a park that we have to maintain. And whether this $950,000 is 25% high, or it's on the money, or whatever, I'm not particularly in favor of creating a new component at Hamels Park that we have kids that can't participate in, and there's no restrooms and things like that. It is a park that's fairly barren. You bring your own stuff in and you go away.
We may need to give it to somebody that can do something with it.
And that's certainly an option that we can talk about. But the other part of this is, if this is going to be a city park, then these are decisions that we need to be involved in, and we're the decision makers on it. The Dog Park Alliance, or the folks who want different dog parks, certainly can give their opinions, but they're not necessarily the ones who
are going to be able to say, this is the place we want it, and it's the only place we want it. It has to work out in the big scheme of things, and I think we have to keep that in mind.
We do, but certainly, I think, when asked what the Dog Park Alliance felt about it, the Dog Park Alliance made the application for the Hamels Park site. That application was approved. They began raising funds. They've raised funds for a couple of years. If we want them as a partner on the development, maintenance, fundraising, ability to bring private funds in, if we want them to be a partner on a dog park, this is the dog park they want. If we don't care about this group of people who supported a dog park for almost 10 years now, advocating for it, then we can do another dog park. I mean, they'll probably use it, and they'll probably be happy it's there. It won't be the one they worked for, and it won't be the one they hoped for, but it'll be one, and they may or may not like it, and I'm sure other citizens will certainly enjoy it, so, and hopefully there's other corporate sponsors. I mean, these aren't the only people that support a dog park, but they have applied for this site. It was approved. And I guess I understand the point of not wanting to create more responsibilities for ourselves and more long-term, ways to build out things. But didn't we maybe do that by accepting Charles Hamel Memorial Park? I mean, maybe it's too, what is Victory doing nothing there forever? Is the win giving back $300,000 and leaving a barren park? Is that, yeah, go us. We did nothing. I mean, I don't understand how that, how that's moving the development of that park forward at all. But I do understand that we have limited resources, and it is best to complete things before moving on to others. But I don't know. I mean, when there's, we are completing Riverview Park. We were awarded additional funding for it, and it is happening. I mean, that's great. And again, I don't begrudge parks that I may not use. I don't mean to, cast any bad will towards the park, the Murphy Street Park. I just mean to say that I feel like these people who have been advocating for this park for a long time have been treated as if they just do not matter. I mean, they have been working really hard for this for a long time.
But not from the council now. They've not been treated that
way
by the council.
Correct.
So to be clear on that, I think it's been some across-the-board support.
You're correct.
For what it is they're
you're
wanting to do.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah, no, but they have been, they have been called, names, and they've been made to have this politicized in ways that I just feel like are, aggressively hateful or disdainful towards people for requesting something that they've been requesting for so long. I mean, if the answer was always no, then the answer should have been no from the beginning. I mean, it's just, I don't know. But I do think Princess Park would be a great location for a dog park. I do. There's no denying that. I mean, I think it certainly has some great facilities there. But, I mean, is it going to happen? Or are we going to be sitting here in 10 years saying, oh, we still don't have a dog park?
That's what I wanted to ask. What about the cost for Princess Park? The question was raised about the $96,000.
Absolutely. Well, let me got a couple more slides.
Okay.
And transitioning to that, I want to state that Jeff mentioned that Riverview Park, with the funding that we received, is now going to be complete. That's not a true statement. There is still a need for additional funding at Riverview Park, which has been part of the statement that I have made and the position I've held, is that what this represents is a diversion of resources away from what are already established as the higher priorities of the city of Shreveport. And so hopefully what could happen is that we would divert any available resources committed to the Clyde Fan Parkway to those higher priorities so that it can become more complete.
So not only do you want the council to
Jeff, I did not interrupt you, and I ask that you at least afford me the respect of being able to continue to make this, and I'll stop and pause and listen to you and answer your questions, but please allow me to continue to proceed, and then let's make this a continued civil dialogue and discussion. The second thing I want to respond to however, is that, we're talking about a reference to a group of folks who've been treated as if they do not matter. And that's not true. And Councilman Jenkins, you're very appropriate to point out that not only have they been afforded a great deal of respect and consideration by this council, certainly by the local media, because the prevailing story or theme in this whole set of circumstances is that we have a $280,000 gift of free money that's going to give us a turnkey dog park in a kit that's going to be wonderful, complete, and total, and that, we're being the big dog ogres over here, and just simply rejecting that, not wanting it because we don't want it to happen. That's not true. This is a classic example of something I saw during my years in the legislature of project creep. You start off with a small appropriation that starts you down a road that ultimately results in the rest of the camel having to come under the tent. This $280,000 leads to a need for the city of Shreveport to ultimately, or the parish of Caddo if they would be willing, but ultimately the city of Shreveport, if that's the scenario that's followed, of substantially higher and higher numbers of public capital resources as well as public operational resources for this particular effort. And so what you end up with in hindsight is a very small amount that came from somewhere else in the beginning, with you being left with the lion's share of the balance of the obligation if you intended to make it something that's worth having and in line with what the citizens' expectations would be. And so that's what this situation represents. But now more specifically to Princess Park, it's less expensive to build, high visibility, easily accessed, better recreational experience for the entire family, enhancement to Shreveport Common Development, as well as the Choice neighborhood, because it would fall within that area as well, augments downtown synergy. In fact, I believe that DDA Director Liz Swain has already expressed great enthusiasm about the possibility of a dog park being developed there, and may be able to direct some resources from there as well. Enriches the therapeutic program at the Princess Park location, as you heard me reference earlier. I don't know if you all are familiar, or even the media is familiar with the concept of what our therapeutic program does, but it's for individuals with special needs and challenges, that things like pet therapy and what have you end up being used as effective parts of what it is that they engage in. Also, return on the investment would be greater because of the recently completed improvements at Princess Park, a much faster construction timeline, reduced operational and management costs. Go back to what I referenced earlier. Right now, in order to have a dog park operating the way it ought to, it has to be a place where everybody's dog has been properly tagged and licensed. That's called for within the ordinance. Right now, at a Hamels Park location, there would be no one on site and available for that. We don't even have anyone who currently staffs our Barnwell facility, so you couldn't even establish it there. So we'd end up having some other place for people to come to deal with that particular aspect of becoming dog park eligible and then coming back to use the dog park. Add to that, if you end up with issues, problems, people who are improperly permitted to use the dog park, other problems, other management problems occurring there, and you need to access someone who is a representative of the city of Shreveport. There is no one right now at a Hamels Park location. There are people who work right now inside the Princess Park location, as well as our other park facilities around the city that we have all along suggested would make better locations, that would be the one responsible for facilitating registration, would be the one that problems could be reported to, that could in fact call police and what have you to help address any larger problems that may develop. And then lastly on this screen, revenue generating opportunities. What this comes with is an opportunity for us to be able to brand this park in line with the way others around the state have been, and give us the opportunity to cover the additional the initial expense for startup, as well as I mentioned, the possibility for some ongoing dollars to be available as well. What you see on the screen now is a copy of a depiction of what that particular facility could look like. You see here, oh, I'm sorry, let me get back. You see here the existing Princess Park Spa Gym facility that houses the therapeutic recreation program. It's currently staffed and manned You have the existing parking area that's here. I believe, Tim, you did this drawing as well. So why don't you come up and step to the mic and help me just in case I misstate anything. But you've got, as Tim has laid out, what would be a small dog area here, a large dog area there. You already have some existing fencing that's already in place along the perimeter. The playground is there, and again, you have all of the other staff, restrooms, and other things that are already available within this location. Common Street runs here, Fairfield there. The interstate is just due south. You have the great and wonderful folks at Fertitas who have made a long-standing commitment to stay and remain in this area that's located here, that I'm sure would love to see significant numbers of the dog park population populating this park on an ongoing basis, and also coming down and enjoying a muffy at Fertitas. And as I mentioned, to the north, you have the ability for this to be something that very well and effectively ties into Shreveport Common and the downtown area as well. The costs for that are detailed, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Jenkins, on that page as well. As you see, that number comes in, you see that number comes in at roughly $96,500. And if you, again, go back and look at the history of dog parks that have been stood up within both Monroe, most recently, Baton Rouge and New Orleans, those that have followed a corporate sponsored model, that amount is one that has been substantially in line with what those other relationships have looked like. And again, we think at this location, with this level of visibility, this level of access could be one that could end up potentially be even more attractive. Under either scenario, with absolutely zero additional revenue, the Princess Park location still represents a much superior option to Hamels Park location, because one, the $280,000 does not build even what has been laid out as the initial phase of the dog park. And then again, when you talk about those other amenities that are obviously needed, and I think amenities is maybe even an inappropriate word, because a bathroom at this location is a necessity. For us to build a location and tell people to go there and not provide a place for them to be able to go and relieve themselves, I think would be negligent on our part. And so when we end up having folks using the bushes for inappropriate purposes, and we find that objectionable and problematic, then we'd end up having to blame ourselves, because we, one, invited them down there, but didn't provide for them the other necessities to be able to make it an appropriate experience. So if you include just the bathroom, the ADA parking, the lighting, and the other things, you end up with a number that far exceeds that $96,000, and those would all be expenses that would have to come from some other public source. As I understand it, the dog park folks have raised somewhere in the neighborhood of about $50,000 to this point. So even if you factor that into that ultimate equation, you're still talking about the need to find additional resources that more than likely comes from a public source. And so all of this, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Jenkins, accounts for why it is that I have held the position that I've held. I think it's been difficult to be able to get all of this, I guess, in one room at one time, to be able to put in front of you all and the public in general. But I believe this is why it's important that we look to try and see if we can ultimately end up pursuing a course that allows us to join the community of cities that have dog parks. And that's one of the greatest things that makes me sad about this situation, is because I am a dog park advocate. I believe that progressive cities, progressive communities make these types of amenities available, but they do so in a smart fashion. And I think, Mr. Chairman, as you alluded to, while you welcome and embrace and encourage the enthusiasm of your citizens to join in these types of efforts, you also have to make sure that ultimately you respect the positions of the folks who we hire as the professionals to advise us as mayors and as council in terms of how these decisions ultimately end up being made in the direction that we go, so that we do not end up in a situation that may be popular with some, but ultimately ends up being proven to be costly, impractical, and largely unworkable. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I turn it over back to you, and certainly stand ready to answer any questions between myself and staff, and hopefully we can come up with some direction that leads us ultimately towards a dog park, not just here at Princess Park, but in other locations around the city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I guess I would ask if it's all right, if you would make sure that council staff has a hard copy of this PowerPoint so that all council members can have a copy of it. It's certainly unfortunate that we couldn't have more people here today. I know we called this meeting on fairly short notice, and it is a Friday. So I have an idea that we'll see a lot of this again. And there will be even more discussion going on relative to this information. I could sit here and say, wow, I wish we'd have seen all these details 2 years ago or 12 months ago, whatever the date is. The fact is, what happened. Here we are. And I think that what we need to do is, as council and administration, look at this hard, make some decisions of, if we're going to move forward with a dog park, what is truly in the city's best interest to do this, because we have to remember, at least in my way of thinking, is that we're creating a park within a park, or a new city park, whatever it is we're creating, it is a city park. If moving forward with Dog Park Alliance, then there are some cooperative agreements there as far as maintenance or fundraising or things. That would be great, but we're not there yet. I think that pretty soon it is time to have that discussion with the dog park folks, and see if their line is drawn in the sand as well. If it's Hamels or nothing, that complicates things. That makes decisions that need to be made harder. But personally, I'm going to have a big problem building something that can't be properly supported at any site. And if we can't provide opportunities for younger children, we can't provide the proper restrooms, shade, and things like that, I believe that is an issue that we have to look at and take into consideration. And certainly from a council district that is very limited on parks, I think I have one in my district, then I take these decisions very seriously and will continue to. Councilman Sam Jenkins.
I echo your sentiments.
I appreciate everybody being here today. I appreciate the conversation. I know this is just step one, but I appreciate this information and look forward to more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
Mr. Thompson, I guess we don't need to officially adjourn because this is not an official meeting.
That's correct.
All right,
We could just leave.
whoever wants to buy lunch, I'll be at the back door.
You need to say the children, I think. Yeah.